Hello, everybody. It's Jordan's Movie Reviews here, and I wanted to make a spoiler review of Terminator Dark Fate. And a big reason why I wanted to do a spoiler review this fast, with the movie only being out a day so far, is because I wanted to get my thoughts out on this movie because I've noticed that so many Terminator fans have been just bashing this movie, saying it's the worst in the franchise, saying that it's trash compared to Terminator 2, blah, blah, blah. Because, let me just say up front, if anybody thinks this movie's trash or just okay, they're wrong. They're just flat wrong because I think this is by far the best sequel post Terminator 2 that we've had by far and away. But before I get on to the review, I just want to say something. If you're one of those idiots that thinks it's okay to take your 12-year-old kid into an R-rated action movie like this, don't. I mean, you'll see why it's probably not the best idea once I get into my review here and get into some of the content that this movie has in store, but just think twice before you take your 12-year-old or younger kid to see this movie. And now that we've got that out of the way, I'm going to start doing my spoiler review of Terminator Dark Fate. First off, I want to get into my pros. One of my pros is Arnold Schwarzenegger, the T-800 Terminator himself. He was in it a lot more than I thought he was going to be. And that's not just to copy the sentiment of one of the YouTubers I watch that does movie reviews, John Campia, which, by the way, if you've never seen his reviews, he's got some great movie opinions. So I suggest you go give him a subscribe if you haven't already, and check out his videos, because he's far and away one of the movie reviewers here on YouTube, along with Chris Stuckman, that kind of inspired me to start reviewing movies in the first place on YouTube. So thanks to them, and if you guys haven't seen their movie reviews, they've got really good, informative movie reviews that generally line up with what I think about a movie. In most cases, there's a fairly minuscule amount of reviews that I don't agree with. And even then, it's not 100% most of the time. It's just little nitpicks here and there I have. But film is subjective, so like I said, my first pro was Arnold Schwarzenegger coming in as the T-800, or as his quote-unquote human name, Carl, which once you see the movie, you'll get that reference. He comes in about the halfway mark, maybe at the beginning of the last act, to help Sarah Connor Danny, which is this new girl that's essentially the new Sarah Connor of the franchise, and her protector Grace, which is this enhanced human, basically the cyborg that comes in to help protect her. Whether a lot of the times they don't say cyborg, they say she's an enhanced human, but once you see when she starts getting scarred up or scratched and stuff, you start to realize she's a cyborg Terminator, just like a lot of the other ones. It's just a newer model, essentially. Well, that's the way I perceived it. Um, and then you've got my next pro, which is Linda Hamilton coming back as Sarah Connor. What do I say about this that hasn't been said already? This is by far and away Linda Hamilton's movie for a good majority of it. She comes in, I would say, probably after the 5-10 minute mark in the scene you've seen in the trailers, which this is a spoiler review, so I can get into this, but she comes in with a Gatling gun or a shotgun, and then she starts shooting the new Terminator, the Rev 9, and you think, oh, it's not doing much, and then she shoots. She's like, oh, okay, without saying much, but that's what you kind of I kind of assumed, but much more vulgar in Sarah Connor's terms. She pulls out a bazooka and starts and basically blows up the Rev 9. So you're thinking, oh, that's a short movie. For people that might be new to the franchise, might be thinking that wanted to check out the franchise for the first time, but no. Mm-mm. He doesn't go down without a fight. And there are a few times that you think he's quote unquote dead, but he's not. Much like there were a few times in the original Terminator from 1984 when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the villain, that you thought his T-800 Terminator was dead, but he really wasn't. And and there's a cool callback to probably the most remembered scene in the original Terminator, which I just rewatched today, where Grace she sees she's weakened, and Danny gets out and she's about to leave, and she's like, I'm not gonna let people die because of me. I'm going to the police. And basically Grace's response is the callback to the original Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800 as the bad guy. She basically says, if you go to the cops, you'll get at least 100 different cops killed. And that essentially made me think back to the original when he goes in and it's the famous "I'll be back," and he goes out and gets the car or truck or whatever and comes in and basically just wrecks shop and kills all of the policemen, and then like they're nothing. So, and then my other pro is Mackenzie Davis as Grace. She was an interesting character because her dynamic between the more soft-hearted, well, she's more soft-hearted than Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor is. She is trying to protect her, and then once Sarah Connor comes along for the ride and helps Grace protect Danny, or Danielle is her full name, from this new Terminator that can split in two. They meet Arnold, and the conflict between her and Arnold is what sold a lot of the movie for me. And then my last and final pro is the Rev 9. Anytime this Terminator was on screen, it was just adrenaline fueled tension that I felt brought back some of the quote unquote horror elements of the original Terminator, like the slasher elements of the original Terminator. Just him stalking down Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor in the first movie. That's what the Rev 9 felt like to me when he was some of the scenes when he was stalking and chasing down Danny and Grace and Sarah Connor. And then that's really about all of my pros for this one. Let's get on to really my only con. And my only con was I felt the first 15 minutes was fantastic. It was probably some of the best action I've seen in a non-superhero or comic book film in years, other than the John Wick franchise. And I feel like the middle kind of dragged, because when they're on their way to meet Arnold, or the T-800, it feels like there's not a whole lot going on. I feel like some of those scenes were just talking and character development, etc., weren't really necessary to the plot. And the ones that were in that middle section, I felt could have been trimmed down maybe a third or a quarter of the way. It's still gotten the gist of what those scenes were about without them dragging on so long. But then the third act redeemed that for me, because there's a airplane fight sequence against the Rev 9 that I thought was phenomenal. That was another really good action sequence in this. And I felt like if that was the finale, it honestly could have been pretty satisfying as far as a finale goes. But then they end up in this warehouse, and where the Rev 9 is still alive, and they're all the characters are teamed up as a group to fight the Rev 9, and that's kind of the only thing. That's another con for me, is as good as that felt, I felt like it felt really similar to the warehouse sequence at the end of Terminator, the original, where Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor were fighting the T-800 when it was just the endoskeleton and it was coming after him. But not many gripes for a movie that, those are just a few cons in an otherwise stellar sequel to the first film. And albeit I didn't have time to rewatch Terminator 2 before I went to the theater tonight, but I did have time to watch Terminator 1, so I might have another review up with some updated opinions once I watch both of them, and then I go see Dark Fate again with my brother once he comes home from college for Thanksgiving break. But until then, hasta la vista, baby.